My name is Elke Feuer. I am the host of the K-Writers Facebook group. I'm also an author and a fiction writer, and I actually author and a fiction writer, of course that's the same thing, an author and a fiction book coach. And I basically help writers to ditch their fear so that they can finish their books and create their dream writing life, because I'm on this journey myself. All right, so I'm just sharing what I'm learning along the way. So today's training is all about how to create your badass writer mindset. And this is something that I'm really passionate about, because I think mindset is one of those things that writers, I think people in general, but writers especially, really struggle with. There are writers who've been writing for years and they still struggle with fear, doubt, and all of those things. The difference is that they're able to continue to write even though they struggle with these things. So the I'm basically going to cover two main areas tonight. The first being the importance of clarity when it comes to your mindset, and the second, how to become a badass writer, right? So the content itself it's a lot of content, and basically what I've done, because it's actually part of a online course that I did, and what I'm trying to do is, rather than overwhelm you with a lot of content, is just to take pieces of that training so that you can get important steps that you can take to start to implement right away and be able to create your own badass writer mindset. So as I mentioned, talking about the importance of clarity. Clarity is really broken into two sections, at least in this training. I mean, you can go on into a lot more depth, but like I said, I'm focusing on two areas tonight. And the first being is your why, and that's why you want to write or why you write. And the second is your dream writing life. And I think those two sort of are important when you're talking about clarity, and I'll explain why. The first, when you're talking about your why, when I ask writers why they write, it's not always something that they can answer right away, and that's usually because they're really focusing on, I want to write, or I want to write this book, or they're focused on the story, a character, an idea, and they haven't really thought beyond what's right in front of them. And there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes when you don't have a bigger picture of your why you want to write, then a lot of times it's what I call shallow. So when you run into the struggles of, sorry, it's my cat's coming in and out, why you actually want to write, whether write in general or write this book, they struggle with being able to work through their fears and their doubts, and they're not sure why they're struggling to finish. And it's usually because they haven't really identified the deep core of why is it that they want to write and why it is that they want to write this book. A lot of times why is because they haven't identified why they want to write this book, and also because writing doesn't necessarily align with their overall goal, or perhaps the book that they're wanting to write doesn't align with their goals or their values in life. It's one thing when you get an idea for a story, but if it's something you're writing and you're struggling to finish it, that might be the reason why. I know I'm saying why a lot, I'm sorry. Okay, and because, as I mentioned earlier, because of this can kind of put you in a vicious cycle of stopping and starting, and you're not really getting to the end, and you can't figure out why. So, one of the ways to gain clarity is to really ask yourself some questions. And some of those questions might be the reason behind the desire to create. What is really why you want to write this book, especially if you're struggling to really get to the end, because when you really dive down deep, it really helps you to uncover why is it that you want to write, what is the purpose of you wanting to create, because a lot of times we think that, and let me also clarify, when you're discovering your why, it doesn't have to be this big life-altering thing. I think that's another reason why some people struggle with finishing their book, because they feel that it's not important enough, it's not, life-changing enough. And the truth is, even if you want to write because you want to entertain, or you just want to get your stories out in the world, that is a justifiable why. And that shouldn't be, or feeling that your book or your story isn't good enough, or there's not a big enough why, shouldn't be a reason that keeps you from writing your book, because all stories matter, whether they're just comedy, whether it's romance, or whatever it is that you want to write. It's important, and that's it doesn't have to be life-changing, is what I'm trying to say. It can be just for the sole purpose of entertaining, and that is still a good why. The next part of clarity is to identify your, what I like to call your dream writing life. And a lot of times when I ask writers, like, what do you see as your dream writing life? Like, tell me all about it. They kind of look at me like they haven't really thought about it. And that's one of the reasons quite often is I start with the question, why do you want to write? Why do you want to write this book? It kind of opens the door to this question about clarity, which is, what is your dream writing life and what that looks like? And I kind of break that into a couple of questions. And well, not really questions. The first is for them to identify, what is their big dream? Like, is it to be the next Nora Roberts? That's my dream. Or maybe it is to become, just a best-selling author. Or maybe it isn't that. Maybe you just want to, tell your stories and make a living with your writing, is just to identify what are your big author dreams, and just to, write them down. Also, I get them to describe their dream writing life in a paragraph, and that means looking at what success looks like for you as a writer. Your success, not necessarily what you think success as a writer looks like, as well as how you're going to fit writing into your life as well too. Because a lot of times I think the reason why we struggle as writers is that we're thinking, I want to write this book, but then we haven't asked ourselves, like, how are we going to actually fit writing into our lives so that it's just another piece of the cog and not just something that we do as a hobby? Because when we think of it as just a hobby or just something, we don't necessarily give it the priority that it deserves, especially if we want it to be a big part of our lives, right? So those are the two big things that I ask whenever I get writers to think about what is their dream writing life, what it looks like. Okay, so those are some things that you can think about for yourself to help you to gain clarity about why you want to write. Now, you may be thinking, okay, well, what the heck does this have to do with me becoming a badass writer? I'm here to talk about mindset. I want to know, how do I become a badass writer? I get it. Trust me. I do that all the time when I get into training. I'm like, give me the meat. But the biggest thing is, the reason why I talk about those two things first is really, to me, that is the foundation before you take the next step, which is becoming a badass writer. Because, you can have all the habits and all these things, and don't get me wrong, these are all, the next things I'm going to talk about are equally important, but having that foundation, first of all, you're knowing your why, clarity about that why, and clarity about the writing life that you want to create for yourself is really the building blocks to becoming a badass writer. So, on to the part that we're all here for, right? And that is becoming a badass writer. One of the things that I like to think is that part of becoming a badass writer is, or those who are badass writers, is because they're making badass writer choices, right? And they're doing it consistently. And that comes in with habits and routines and all those things that really help us to make or become better writers, badass writers. But I'm not going to dive into a lot of those at this point, because the truth is each person's habits and routines that are going to help them to become a better writer, only you can answer that for yourself. But what I am going to do is to break down 4 areas that will help you to become a badass writer. Okay? So the first one is to identify the mediocre choices that you make. And this for me was an exercise that I did. And ironically enough, I got the idea from a finance book where the author was talking about, I don't remember the term that she used, but it was basically you're making crappy choices to do with your finances, and what are better choices that you need to make. And I thought, oh my God, that's genius. You can really apply that to all areas of your life. And that's where I got the idea for it, because I knew that I was making what I ended up calling mediocre choices in my writing life, and thinking about better choices or badass writer choices that I should be making instead. But sometimes we know we're making those decisions, but sometimes for me, it's always good to see it in writing. So the first thing that you can do, and I'm going to show you I have something a little bit more formal, I'll be honest with you, that I use in my training, but this is just something that I created for myself. I don't know if you can see it. And it basically just says, badass writer mindset. And on one side, I have mediocre choices that I make or have made, and then badass writer choices that I need to make instead. And I keep this everywhere, and it just reminds me when I'm, say, or think about making the choices, the mediocre choices, I know that I have a badass choice that I can make instead. And how that helps is a lot of times it's so easy to just let the days pass where we're making all of these mediocre decisions, and we don't realize how big an impact they make on our lives until after days, weeks, months, years have passed, and we're like, holy crap, I haven't achieved what I wanted to. So that's one way, seeing it in writing and identifying, hey, these are bad choices that I'm making. Or not bad, I don't like to say bad, mediocre choices that I'm making. And then on the flip side of that, having a better choice to make, so that when you're giving yourself to say, okay, I'm making this mediocre choice, this is the badass choice that I should be making instead. It really helps you to, one, have a guide for that, right? To make those choices, or what choices or options that you have other than mediocre. And then it also helps to build good habits, because each time you're making a better choice instead of a mediocre choice, then you're building that habit of making better decisions that are going to help you to become a better writer, right? Be a badass writer, as I like to call it. So that is the first thing that I do for myself, that I have done, that has been helped me a lot to make leaps and bounds in my writing, probably in the last 6 months. All right. Now, the next thing that you can do to becoming a badass writer, and this is a big one, is to remember that it's an ongoing journey. I think too many times, we tend to beat ourselves up, right? Because we're like, we're making these bad choices, we're not moving ahead. Why aren't we better at this? When the truth is, we forget that, we've been making bad choices for a year or 2 years or maybe even 10 years or more, right? And then we're suddenly expecting to say, okay, I'm going to make better choices, and then suddenly we're going to become this new, different person overnight, when the truth is, we're not. That's the first thing. It took us all those years to create those bad habits, and it's going to take time to create new, better habits. And it's an ongoing journey. It's not a journey that's like, oh, I made this bad habit and now, I'm over here and it's going to be awesome. It's like this, we're constantly going to have to be times where we make those great choices for a long period of time, and then we fall in a slump, and then we have to pick ourselves back up again. It's an ongoing journey. I think it's important to recognize that, so we give ourselves some grace, for one. And I think it removes the pressure of feeling that we have to get better now. We have to be better now. It's an ongoing journey, just like our writing journeys and becoming better writers is an ongoing, nonstop journey. The same is true for building better habits and becoming better writers and having a badass writer mindset, right? It's an ongoing journey. And I think that when we recognize that, it allows us to give ourselves some grace and to know that we're gonna fall, but we're also gonna have success as well too. So that's the second thing. The third way to becoming a badass writer is staying connected. And this is a big one, and I kind of broke the staying connected into two parts. The first is staying connected to your creativity. And that can mean different things for different writers. For instance, for some writers, I know when they struggle with being creative on their writing part, they also want to, they do other creative activities, and that basically just fills up their creative well and get their juices flowing in all areas of their creativity. So if that works for you, then that's how you can stay connected to your creativity. Because I think what ends up happening is that when we don't write, we basically, our creative well is, what I like to say, empty, and we're not filling it by writing. And what ends up happening, it just becomes stagnant, and it's so much more difficult for us to get the ball rolling again. Whereas, you know, if we're not creative or we're struggling with this area, doing something else creatively or that will connect us to our creativity, whatever that creative activity is a great way to keep our well filled, so that when we are ready to go back to that writing, we've built up that creative well, if that makes any sense. And like I said, it's different for every person. Like for me, I'm not a painter. I'm not an artist. I know that what stimulates me and gets me excited about writing again is reading through my story, reading other books, doing online courses, learning about the art and the craft of writing. That basically for me is what helps to fill my creative well. So that's important to discover what your, how you can stay connected to your creativity. Now, the second part of that, to staying connected, is to get a support group that can help you. And this can look like many different things. And I'm going to cover a few of those, because a lot of times when I say support, people think, oh, well, it's other writers, or it's this, or it's that. When the truth is, it can be a lot of different things. And it's about finding one that fits you as well as fits your life. And some of those options are industry experts. And this could be bloggers, I want to make sure I'm saying it right, because there's a lot of different ones. You know, there's a lot of bloggers and writers that offer free challenges, masterminds, all different kind of things, online classes, all different kind of things that will help you to learn and grow as well too. And they also provide that support as well. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. It's just a matter of finding what works for you. And the best part about these kind of options is that they not only, especially experts, they give you an opportunity to learn from them, right? Because you're not just there for the support, you're learning, you're growing, and you're making connections. And that in itself is a great area of getting support as well too. So that's really important, industry experts. I know me personally, I have made some amazing other writers online that I know that I would not be where I am in my writing journey if it wasn't for them, and because they're way ahead of me in the game. So, you know, they know learning about, you know, their struggles and what they did that worked and didn't work, really helped me on my journey. And just knowing some things to not do was really helpful. So, because trust me, there's going to be a lot of mistakes that you're going to, or things that are going to happen that weren't expected or weren't what you hoped for. So as much as you can avoid those as possible, it'll make the journey a little bit easier. So the second support group is a coach or a mentor. They're both going to really give you the support and the guidance that you're going to need. It's just a matter of finding which one is going to work better for you. Sometimes some people are very fortunate and they can find a mentor that is not only going to help them but support them as well too. A coach, you're usually paying for a coach. So if that's an option for you, I know I've paid for coaches in the past that have helped me leaps and bounds. So it's worth the investing because you're really investing in yourself. But if that's not an option for you, perhaps you can find a mentor, somebody who's willing to work with you, coach with you, that won't charge you. Okay? The other option is friends and family for support. Now, I always say this with a disclaimer. You want to make sure that, one, you have friends and family that will support you, because I know as writers, I was fortunate to have people in my life that supported me and family that supported me, as well as friends that supported me, but I know that's not the case for everybody. So why I put the disclaimer, because what you want to do is you want to have family that are going to support you, push you, help you to grow, get you out of your comfort zone, and not just tell you what you want to hear. Oh, this is great, this is wonderful, when the truth is, you know that it needs work and you know you need to get out of your comfort zone. So that's why I always say, when it comes to friends and family, I say that disclaimer. All right. So the next area of support is with writing sprints and monthly challenges. And this has helped me in so many ways. Like, I've participated in Camp Nano and Nano for years. Sometimes I win, sometimes I don't. But for me, it wasn't about the winning. It was about just the accountability, the support that they provide, the writers that I met, that we supported each other and helped us to reach our goals. Even if we didn't win, we still made, at least for me, I made a dent in my work. And I moved my writing forward so that I wasn't necessarily able to finish the whole book in a month, but it really helped me to get the meat of the story down so that I could then later finish it. So those are really great. There's some great options on Facebook groups. There's online groups. Some are free, some are paid. There's just so many options out there. And if that's an area where you want to have accountability and support, as far as, you know, writing face-to-face or writing online, there's so many options. I've even seen them doing writing sessions on YouTube for an hour, 2 hours. So like I said, there's tons of options out there if you're looking for that support and accountability. All right, so the next, fourth and final way to help you to become a badass writer is to stay focused. Ooh, I think this is always a challenge for writers. I know it's a challenge for me because I think most creatives, it's like if you were to look inside their brain, it would be like so many ideas floating around. It's crazy. It's like there is no letters for it. It's too many letters to say ADHD, right? We always have so many ideas and so many things going on in our brain that it's really difficult to stay focused. So I'm going to share with you some of the ways that I use to stay focused, as well as that I've helped clients to stay focused. And the first thing is to identify your 3 big goals. And I usually cover this within the clarity part, to be honest, because once you get clear, at that point, you kind of know what it is that you want, and identifying your 3 big goals that you want to achieve in your writing life. And they don't have to be huge, enormous. They can be, of course, or they can be just as simple as, like, I want to find an agent. I mean, that is a pretty big one, actually. But maybe within finding an agent, let me take a step back. There's 3, so I have you identify 3 goals only, because a lot of times we try to do it all and we end up getting overwhelmed. So when we focus on just 3, and 3 specifically that are going to move your writing life forward and have a positive impact on your writing, because it's so easy to just choose stuff that we think we need to do, but they don't actually necessarily get us closer to where we want to be. And the next thing within those 3 goals is to pick 3 action steps for each goal that is going to take you closer to achieving that goal. 6 things. It just keeps it really, 9 things. It really can't count tonight. It just really helps to keep you focused. And which leads me to the next step, which is to always be setting and working on setting and meeting your goals. Always be working on the goals towards your writing life. Because too many times it's easy to just say, well, I'm going to set this annual goal to finish my book. And then the end of the year comes and we haven't checked in, we haven't done anything to do with, or maybe we've written half the book. But the truth is that, you know, we need to sort of narrow that down. So what I like to do for myself, I like to set 90-day goals. I still set annual goals as sort of a long-term target, but in order to help me achieve them, I like to do them in 90 days. Or if 90 days sounds too overwhelming, you can break it into 30 days if that works better for you. Because like I said, even 90 days for some people can seem overwhelming. And that in itself will help you to stay focused. And I also use what I like to call check-ins to say, okay, once a week, I'm going to check in and see how I'm doing towards reaching my goals. Because even setting the 90-day goals, it's easy to let a month, 2 months, 3 months, and then, oh crap, I've done 2 things and I haven't gotten anywhere where I wanted to go. That is so important. And that's why I say it's always good to be setting and meeting your goals, and within that means checking in on how you're doing, and that's so important. I have weekly checklists and I have monthly checklists so that I can see where I'm falling behind, what I need to do to get back on track. And then I know that sounds like a lot, but the truth is you don't have to do that. You can just say, okay, every week, at the beginning of the week, I'm going to check in. What is that goal that I had set for myself? Ooh, did I take this action step? No? Okay, what stopped me? What can I do to fit that in next week to get it done? So that is really important, and that helps you to stay focused, because when you're constantly looking at and reviewing your goals on a regular basis, it gets you excited to say, ooh, I want to do this. Oh, it reminds you, because let's face it, life is crazy, and if you're not looking at stuff, a month, 2, 3 months will pass by, and if you haven't looked at it to remind yourself of why you're on this journey and what you want to achieve, that time will disappear like you won't believe. And I'm sure you know that. And it's when you're constantly looking at it, it helps you to stay focused on achieving them. All right. And then the next thing is to work on your writing skills. I think most writers are pretty good about doing this. We're constantly reading books. We're constantly doing, online courses if you have the money for it. There's a lot of free stuff out there as well too, following bloggers for tips, identifying what is it that you want to focus on, an area maybe that you want to improve on, or that you need to improve on, right? And working on those as well too is a great way to stay focused, because 9 times out of 10, when you're working on those skills, you're going to be building them into your story, or wanting to build them into your story. And that keeps you focused on writing and keeps you focused on your book that you're writing. Okay? So, and last but certainly not least is to keep it simple. I struggle with this one, to be honest, because I like to keep my plate full, because that keeps me focused, because otherwise I get like shiny syndrome. But there are times, so I like to keep a full plate, because like I said, it helps me to stay focused on all the things that I need to do. But at the same time, sometimes when I start to feel overwhelmed, I know that I need to take a step back, break it down, keep it simple, instead of trying to do all the things, or breaking down one thing into a million things and then just end up thinking, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get it done? Keep it simple. I personally like to brainstorm, get it all out of my head, and look at it and say, okay, what is the priority here? What is going to move me closer to where I want to go? And that's how you can keep it simple, is to focus on what are the things and the actions that you can take that are going to get you closer to where you want to be with your writing. Whether that's finishing the book, or whether that's finding an agent, or whether that is pitching your book, whatever that is for you. And that's how you can keep it simple, is just to focus on the tasks that are going to have the biggest impact towards helping you to achieve your goals and your dreams and becoming a badass writer. So if you have any questions, like I said, I'm trying to see if there was anybody watching. Sorry, I was so focused in checking the lighting and looking at my notes that I'm not seeing any questions. Let me see here. I think I see... Oh, Becky, if you're still watching, thank you for being here. I appreciate that. And if you have any questions about anything that I've said, or maybe things that you're struggling with your mindset or becoming a badass writer, please post them in the comments. Even if you are watching the replay, I will come back and make sure that I am watching them. I'm trying to keep this to 30 minutes, which I did. Woohoo! Because I know everybody's time is precious. Trying to see, sometimes the comments will come up on Facebook or on my computer. Okay, so thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm probably gonna also post this on YouTube so that you can watch it later there as well too, and share it in the group. But thank you guys so much for joining me. And like I said, if you're watching the replay and you have any questions at all, please feel free to post them in the comments, and I will be happy to share them with you. And I will see you next time. Bye.